Let's start this session laying on your back with the knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. And if you have time, certainly pause the video and just stay here and rest a few minutes before you start. That's actually the best way to start any sequence. And then when you're ready to move, we'll start with the arch and curl. So we'll be rolling up and down on the sacrum here. So let's start with a curl. If you start to bring your tailbone under, scooping your tailbone under, let your navel lightly press into the spine so your low back smooths out onto the floor. So that's in a curled position. And then very slowly just roll down your sacrum until you feel either a neutral spine, or you can keep tilting until your tailbone is almost touching the floor and you find a nice little arch in your low back. You could slide your hand behind your low back. So very slowly rock back and forth. It's meant to be a slow, continuous flow that will help to loosen up all along the low, mid, back area and the hip area. If you'd like to coordinate with your breath, then as you roll into the arch, you can inhale. As you scoop the tailbone under, then you could exhale. Now, as you do this, the rest of the body just stays relaxed and it gets to kind of go along with the flow. So you'll notice that your head naturally bobs a little bit forward and back. And feel free to allow that or to even exaggerate that. So, like when you're scooping your tailbone under, smoothing out the low back, your neck will naturally arch a bit. And then when you're arching the low back area, the back of your neck smooths out a bit, your chin drops slightly towards the chest. So let that happen. That way you just feel that loosening all along the spine from the tailbone up to the base of the skull. So do that a couple more times and then we'll add on. Okay, let's add on some walking motions. So we know we have the knees bent and the feet are about hips distance apart. So the knees are pointing up towards the sky. And we want to keep the knees pointing up for this next bit rather than, letting them splay out to one side or the other. So press into the floor with your right foot, the heel in particular, and move that right knee forward. And that action will start to pull the right hip up off the floor. Any amount is fine. And then on your exhale, slowly lower it back down. Take the whole exhale to set it down. And then let's do the other side. So with an inhale, you press the left foot in, move that left knee forward. You'll feel the left hip begin to rise. And then on the exhale, you slowly lower it back down. So you end up in a neutral spine. Now do that back and forth a few times. These are the motions that your body would make when walking in a healthy pattern. But you may notice that one hip moves much more easily than the other one. And don't worry about that. If it happens, they will eventually become more balanced. So take a few more cycles there, just noticing the sensations that you feel, becoming aware of any imbalances, and only moving to um, not even quite to your edge. We want this to feel good, not like you're trying to achieve anything in particular. Now, when you're ready to add on, I'll give you the next little cue. The next time that you're raising your right hip. So I'm going to wait until Linda's right hip starts to raise, and then I want you to reach your arm towards your foot and slide like shoulder towards your hip. So you're arching that right side of the back. You're still relaxing the left side though. And then begin to lower that hip on down. Let your arm and shoulder slide back into place. Try that with the other side. So it's still that walking motion of rolling the hip up, but we're adding an arch to just half of the back while letting the other half relax. And then when you lower that hip down, just release the arm and shoulder. And do that again on each side. So when we isolate each half, we can learn more about the body and we begin to send messages from the muscles to the brain, from the brain to the muscles about how to balance that out. All right, so we've done that a couple of times on each side. Yes, yes. Okay, so now just relax. Let everything go for a few breaths. Feel whatever you feel. This pause gives the brain and the body time to communicate to each other before moving on. And then when you're ready to move on, we have one more piece that we'll add on. I call it the up and over. So we press in with the right foot, bring that right knee forward, let the right hip lift as high as it will lift. And now engage the glutes so that you can lift that hip even higher. And you become into like a cattywampus bridge where the right hip is higher than the left, but the left hip comes off the floor as well. And then when you've gone about as high as you can, then engage the muscles to bring that left hip up to meet the right. So you're in a true balanced bridge pose. Leave the left hip where it is and begin to slowly lower the right hip until it touches down. And then once it has touched down, then you can lower back onto your sacrum and return to a neutral spine. And then pause for a breath here and just relax and let everything go. On this one, it's important to rest in between each one. And your bridge doesn't have to be very high, or if you're flexible, maybe your bridge is really high. That part doesn't matter. And then when you're ready to start the other side, let's see, we did the right, so let's do the left. Okay, lifting that left hip and then lifting it more so that eventually you sort of drag that right hip up off the floor and then you lift the right hip so that they are once again evenly lifted. And then you lower only the left hip. So it's like you're going up and over, creating an arc. Once you set that left hip down, then slowly roll back onto your sacrum. So now once again, you're in neutral and just pause for a breath there. And then do that one more time on each side. And then after you finish the cycle that you're on, let everything go. Just relax. And when you feel ready for the next movement, scoop your hands around your right thigh and gently cradle it up towards that right shoulder. You can let the knee unhinge a bit so that the foot is kind of reaching more up towards the sky. And then very slowly and very gently, just give yourself about 5 little pulses, bringing that knee a little closer to the shoulder, loosening up a little more into the hip and thigh area now. And after your 5th one, then you can cross that ankle over the left thigh. Leave the foot flexed and use your right hand to nudge that thigh away from the hip socket. So we're just wanting to lubricate that entire hip socket area here. Usually 5 or 6 little pulses is all it takes. And And then when you're finished, you can set that foot down and scoop the other leg in towards the shoulder. Again, just a gentle scoop, and the knees don't have to be severely bent, especially if you have knee issues. It's fine to leave your foot kind of reaching up towards the sky. But just pulse that thigh towards the chest, in and out. Again, not trying to reach a deep stretch here, just trying to lubricate the joints. Now you take 5 or 6 little pulses, and then you cross the ankle over the right thigh. Keep the foot flexed, that just protects the knee. And then a few more little pulses, another 5 or 6, pressing on the inner thigh with that left hand, trying to press the thigh, the head of the thigh bone away from the hip socket. And then release that foot back down to the floor. And you can you keep the legs here if you like for the next one, or you can let both knees come in towards the chest. You just have to use your core to hold them there if you choose that option, because I want you to stretch the arms up overhead. I call this one the wiggle worm. So reach with one arm more than the other, kind of go back and forth. And then when you're reaching with one arm, like if you're reaching with that right arm, press your right hip away from you. When you're reaching with the left arm, press your left hip away from you. So you're just kind of wiggling throughout your entire spine. This is a really nice way to get into not so much just the muscles, but deep into the connective tissue, the fascia that's woven throughout the muscles, the ligaments, the joints. And when you feel ready, you can set the feet back down and let the arms slide out into a T. We'll take a little bit of a twisting motion. If the feet are not out a little wider than the hips, go ahead and walk them out, and then begin to let the knees drop down to one side and then the other. It doesn't matter how far they drop down. They may naturally loosen up and get a little closer towards the floor each time, but it's not our intent to try and do a deep twist. Now, you let your head kind of bob back and forth with this twist, and it may feel natural to you to let your face go the opposite direction as your knees. And that would be natural movement of the spine. And then if you'd like, you could also get your arms involved here, like your arms as if they were rolling pins from the shoulder. Whichever direction your face is turning, you can turn that palm up, roll the arm so the palm is up, the other palm is down. And then you alternate that. So the arm is rolled so the palm is up, whichever direction your face is looking. The opposite arm is down. The opposite palm is down. And if that gets too confusing, then just don't try to include the arms. Doing this motion, I call it the dish rag because it's like wringing out a dish rag. You're wringing out all along your spine. It's a great way to rejuvenate from the base of the skull on down to the tailbone, loosening up and getting into those areas that just can be very, very stuck for a lot of us. Maybe one more time on each side. And then when you feel like you've had enough of this, you just let the feet walk back in so they're about hip distance apart, leaving the knees bent. And you let the arms slide down until they're maybe 45-degree angle away from the body and the palms are facing up. That way the shoulders relax. And then just spend a moment or two right here allowing yourself to rest and to observe the sensations that you're feeling, and then to notice how you feel.